University and Cambridge University. We're just a few minutes away from starting, and I'm joined in the commentary box by Ben Jones and India Mattocks. We've hot-footed it across and we are ready and raring to bring you this race. We can see there on screen the crews are just getting themselves into position, the start line just the other side of Putney Bridge. And this seems like a very good opportunity to run you through the two crews contesting this 41st race between these two great institutions. We'll start with Oxford University. We can see they are on screen at the moment. In the coxing seat this year is Verity Black, studying medicine at Green Templeton. In front of her in the stroke seat it is their captain Olivia Ramsey, doing the DPhil in oncology at St Hilda's. Amelia Monaghan sits at 7. She's in her 4th year doing a BA in Classics and French at Oriel. Agnes Prager sits at 6, doing a Masters in Earth Science at St Hugh's. Erica Dutton at 5, doing medicine at Green Templeton. Hazel Bott at 4, Biomedical Sciences at St Anne's. Charlotte Wheatley sits at 3, doing a Masters in Engineering in Material Sciences at Queen's College. Sibby O'Grady is at 2, doing her BA in History and Economics at Pembroke, while the bow seat is occupied by Indigo Buckler, doing a DPhil in Medical Sciences at Wolfson College. Their opposition, the light blues, Cambridge University, on screen at the moment. With our back to us, it is Sarah Sharp in the coxing seat, doing her PhD in Environment Education at Jesus College. Their president, Madeline Jackson, in the stroke seat, graduate medicine at St Edmunds. Arden Berlinger is studying PhD in Plant Sciences at Pembroke. Fair Clarkson at 6, 4th year medic at Emmanuel College. Gigi Pezier is in the 5 seat, doing Theology, Religion and Philosophy of Religion at Queen's, whilst Jessica van de Grint Stoop is doing a PhD in Psychology at St Catherine's. At 3 it is Eugene Dodds. At 2 is Grace Forward. And in the bow seat it is Claire Cooper, doing her BA in Computer Science at Sydney, Sussex. And India, we can see the two coxes at the moment are just getting themselves lined up, the hands in the air, not quite ready to go. What was interesting though, India, it was Oxford who won the coin toss. They chose Surrey, so they'll have the big bend advantage. How do you think that's going to play out in the early stages of this race?
I think Oxford this year has been really focused on trying to work on their start. They've been practicing it a lot. So choosing Surrey indicates that they back their start and they also back their race pace rhythm. So I think, Cambridge are notorious for being fast off the start, so let's see if Oxford can hold them. And
Ben, just very quickly, we can see the umpire is just getting ready to go. The umpire, Gareth Finnecane, just making sure the crews are aligned. This is slightly different from the men's and women's blue boats, the heavyweight races, because there's no stake boats. What's it like on the start line at this point?
Attention.
Yes, as you say, we have a freestanding start. We're about to be underway here, I believe.
Yes, we are now underway, the 41st lightweight women's boat race between Oxford on the Surrey station, Cambridge on Middlesex on the right-hand side of your screen. And Ben, it's a phenomenal start for Cambridge University.
Yes, really, really fast out the blocks here, already taking a number of seats, Cambridge are. Really capitalising on that fast start that we perhaps suspected that they might have.
Certainly, Cambridge, as we said, on Middlesex, they lost the coin toss, but they will have the initial bend advantage as we move around towards Fulham Football Club in about a few minutes' time or so. But what a roar, India, at this stage in the race. Both Oxford and Cambridge, lots of support on the Putney embankment, and they're passing them at the moment. But Oxford, they're down. They've got a lot of work to do in the early stages of this race.
Yeah, both crews there had a really clean start, both of them getting away nicely. Cambridge definitely pushed away more, which was maybe expected, but Oxford seemed to be really rating pretty highly, getting their blades in nice and sharp, so hopefully they can just settle down and stride out onto their race pace rhythm and earn some seats back from Cambridge.
Absolutely. We can see the back of umpire Kath Finnecane at the moment. She'll be pleased with this start. Both of these crews staying well apart in the early stages of this race. But Ben, at the moment, that Cambridge crew, that rhythm is looking so powerful, so well drilled at this stage in the race. And they're coached, of course, by Jo Lee. It's her first year at Cambridge University, and she'll be delighted with his performance in the early stages.
Absolutely, I think she definitely will, and this is a really important stage here as we start to take the bend in a few seconds. They can capitalise on this lead, perhaps take a few more seats, but if not, they've just got to really, really dig in now. It's a really crucial part, getting into rhythm here and establishing that really strong base race rhythm and pace.
Well, here we go then. It's the first warning from the umpire, and it is Cambridge University just straying towards into the middle of the station at the moment. They're, of course, stroked by their president, Maddie Jackson. She'll start to relay that back to Cox Sarah Sharp, making sure they're communicating well in the early stages of this race. But we're sitting about 2/3 of a length, 3/4 of a length's advantage to Cambridge University. And there we see Fulham Football Club just in the background. And at this point, the bend will start to favour the light blues. It's going to start to favour Cambridge University as for the next couple of minutes or so. It's probably 3/4 of a length advantage to Cambridge in the early stages of the race. And India for Oxford, it's so important for them to hold on in the stages of this race as we get another warning to Cambridge from the umpire.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is pretty much very similar to what happened last year in the race. Cambridge got away early, and now the crew just has to focus on really getting those blades in and sending the boat forward, trying to not let Cambridge get any more distance, because when they start to get clean water, that's when Cambridge will just fly off.
And Ben, I think what's important at this race, at this pace for Oxford, is Cambridge haven't moved away too much in the past minute or so. Oxford are very much hanging in there, and they're clearly stepping on, doing all that they possibly can to make sure that Cambridge aren't able to capitalise on this advantage.
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting now just to see the lines the Coxes are taking. And obviously, Cambridge were quite deep towards the Middlesex station, perhaps slightly out of the stream off the start, but they've now drove really deep into the corner here, pushing Oxford slightly out of the stream, perhaps, but this is a really crucial steering moment for the Coxes here.
Yeah, it's a big moment as well for the Oxford Bow 3, for Indigo Buckler, Sibby O'Grady and Charlotte Wheatley. They can still see that Cambridge crew out of the corner of their eyes. Psychologically, that's so important as we come past Fulham Football Club. They've still got contact. They can relay that to the rest of their crew to say we're still in touch, we're still holding them. And as the Cambridge bend is starting to run out, then it's going to be pretty much a drag race up until Hammersmith Bridge, and then at that point Oxford will be able to capitalise on their bend advantage. But the Dark Blues at the moment, stroked by their captain Olivia Ramsey, are still in contention. They've still got contact, sitting at about 3/4 of a length.
Cambridge!
And for Cambridge, Ben, at this point, they've really got to step on as their bend advantage runs out.
Absolutely. I think they've got to be really confident here that they can maintain this advantage. Oxford really are holding strong here, and all credit to them. They're about 3/4 of the length down off the start, but they are obviously establishing a really strong rhythm here, really strong base pace, and now they've got to be confident that they can start to claw a few seats back as they start to take the advantage around their bend here into Hammersmith.
Absolutely. Well, the next big marker for them on the course will be the Harrods Depository. That'll be coming in about 2 or 3 minutes time, but still the warnings come from the umpire Claire Finnecane. Her flag's out. She continues to warn the light blues of Cambridge as they're starting to drift across. This is some seriously aggressive steering we're seeing from their Cox Sarah Sharp, and at this point she's sending the puddles down, she's sending the dirty water down on the Oxford crew as the light blues try and move away and try and really shut the door in the first 5 minutes of this race. We saw previously Oxford still had contact. They were sitting at about 3/4 of a length. Well, it's now clear water. There's that gap is just starting to grow now between Oxford and Cambridge in the early stages of this race. And India at this point, Oxford have to dig in, don't they?
Yeah, as I said earlier, when the boat gets clean water, it becomes even harder to kind of catch up. So right now, Oxford are really going to have to dig deep, trust their race plan and trust their race pace, and just hopefully just keep on taking inches away from Cambridge.
And Ben, at this point in the race, we're seeing why the Coxes play such a huge role and can win or lose you the race. Cambridge right across, Sarah Sharp right in front of this Oxford crew, and it's a risky strategy, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is very risky, as you say, but this is also really aggressive coxing. I think it can be smart coxing. It can really pay off if your crew can really buy into what the Cox is doing here, can really deliver a good, strong push. But if it doesn't pay off, it can be a really, really risky manoeuvre. And Oxford, as Cambridge are getting water, might be looking to get the bump, and that can result in a disqualification, but we'll have to see what plays out there.
Well, we know the women's blue boat from Oxford a couple of years ago tried to do that. They suspected Cambridge might jump in front of them. They tried to go for that bump. It didn't come. It's not quite coming in this lightweight race at the moment. Cambridge, though, now that they've sent their puddles, now that they've sent that dirty water over to Oxford, they're able just to drift back out to their station, back over to the Middlesex side of the river. And there we see Hammersmith Bridge just starting to rear itself in the distance probably about 500 or 600 metres or so to go until we get to Hammersmith Bridge, and then at that point the bend will favour the dark blues. The bend will favour Oxford University, and it's a long bend through the middle of this race, and Oxford will do all it possibly can, first of all to get themselves back in contact with Cambridge, but also to start moving back up the Cambridge boat, back into contention in this race. We can see there in the bow seat for Cambridge, Claire Cooper. She is one of 3 returners to this year's blue boat for the lightweight. She sat at 2, she's moved back 1 to the bow seat, and what a spectacular view she's got. She'll be the one who is first underneath Hammersmith Bridge, and as you know, the statistics show if you're leading at Hammersmith Bridge, so often you will go on to win the race, but there is still 2/3 of this race still to go before we get to the finish line. First underneath Hammersmith Bridge, it is the light blues, it is Cambridge University, but still the warnings come, still the flag is out from umpire Kath Finnecane, and Oxford are getting closer. India, Oxford are getting very, very close. They had probably a few feet, that's down to just a few inches, isn't it? And they're moving on Cambridge.
Yeah, Oxford here have to stay pretty internal. It might upset your rhythm being so close and being so close to a clash, so the Oxford crew have got to stay within their boat and just trust their rhythm again, and just keep on pushing on, but not be distracted by Cambridge being right on their bows.
Well, here we go then. Oxford, they're back in contention. Oxford have got contact with Cambridge. They're starting to move. That gap, it was a few feet of clear water, that's now gone. We can see there from the overhead shot, Oxford are starting to move. They've clawed it back down to within a length of the light blues, and if they're able to sustain this round the Hammersmith Bend, this could be an incredibly important race for them in the middle of this race. But Ben, a length is a long way in H racing and in rowing, so it's a lot of work to do just to get themselves back into contention, but they've got to go, and they've got to go now, don't they?
Absolutely, they really do. You know, Oxford have the advantage here coming around the Hammersmith Bend on the Surrey station. I think they have to have in mind here that as the river starts to bend back around under Barnes, Cambridge are going to be back having the advantage, so this really is a now or never time for them to get back in contact and start to take those seats.
For Oxford University, they've got 4 returners. They're led by one of them, their captain Olivia Ramsey, in the stroke seat, and they'll be drawing on all of that experience from last year, looking to right the wrongs. Cambridge, of course, going for their 6th consecutive win in this race. They're in prime position to do that, but those 4 returners from the Oxford crew will be looking to upset that result, looking to get a win for the first time in 5 races. And again, the flag is back out. This time it's Oxford who are getting warned as they're starting to drift into that middle of the stream and push themselves up towards Cambridge University. But that move that we saw as we're coming past Hammersmith Bridge from Oxford, it was valiant, it was brave, it's exactly what they needed to do, but at this stage India is looking like it's not quite worked out for them.
I think when you're getting so close to a crew, you've just got to stick to your race plan. You've got to stay internal and just keep this stroke length really long. Here, Cambridge just seem to have a much longer and bigger rotation around the front end, and I think that's given them quite a big advantage here. And even if you're catching up with the crew, Oxford has still got to do their race and stay within their boat.
Both these crews, the blade work is impeccable. The conditions out there on the water today are immaculate. Quite often the tide can rear its ugly head, but not today. Racing conditions are ideal for these 2 lightweight crews, and it's delivering a wonderful race as we enter the middle stages of this race. There we can see on screen Verity Black. She was the Oxford Women's Spare last year. She's doing her medical degree at Green Templeton, and we can see that she's just starting to get herself a little bit closer to that Cambridge crew. But there are our leaders on screen. It's the light blues going for their 6th consecutive win in this race. And there's their president, Maddie Jackson. Arden Berlinger sat behind, or they've got 3 returners in this year's crew. That stern pair, Maddie Jackson, Arden Berlinger, so much experience they bring. And of course, Claire Cooper in the bow seat, studying at Sydney, Sussex. And Ben, at this point in the race, we've just panned back over to Oxford University. We got a glimpse of the margin, and it's back up to clear water. Cambridge look to be really stepping on, don't they?
Absolutely, they do. I think, you know, in the sport of rowing, we talk about breaking the elastic here, and that's what's really crucial. Oxford don't want to let that happen, and that's when the clear water starts to establish and really grow between the 2 shells. As we can see here on screen, there's a fair gap, but it's by no means over at this point.
It's certainly not. The bend advantage still favours that Oxford crew, but we'll see from Cambridge. It's whether or not they can grow this margin over the next couple of minutes, or perhaps move themselves back out in front of Oxford to wash down then with the dirty waters, with the puddles. But there we see overhead that margin is growing. What was a couple of feet is now starting to move out to a quarter of a length, a third of a length, as we're coming towards and past Chiswick at the moment. But Cambridge University looking so good as they have done in previous years, really starting to stretch out. And as we said, it's a new head coach they're working with, the lightweight women. They're working with Jo Lee, previously in the Oxford Blue Boat back in 2013. So she's switched allegiances, she's back over to the lightweights. And what a bit of magic she's bringing to this crew at the moment. We said it was a third of a length, quarter of a length. Now Cambridge University starting to look very ominous, this margin. It's growing nearly up to about 2/3 of a length, 3/4 of a length through the middle stages of this race. And India, at this point in the race, what do Oxford need to do to get themselves back into contention and to make sure the heads aren't dropping?
I think the Cox here plays a pretty crucial role, so she can see where the Cambridge crew are. She could also see how fast their boat is moving, and it looks to be pretty fast conditions at the moment on the water, so those splits would be fast, and she's got to tell the crew that they're moving well, and they just need to not try and think about getting a few lengths up. They just need to think about taking it inch by inch up to Cambridge, but also not to lose hope. The race isn't over yet, and there still can be work to be done.
Certainly not, and this is probably one of the best Oxford lightweight crews we've seen in recent years. They've raced well across their fixtures, across some international racing as well, travelling across to the Heineken in the Netherlands, and at that point they were within 20 seconds of Osiris, the reserve crew for the Oxford women, and just another 20 seconds behind the Blue Boat. So there's incredible depth, there's incredible competition in the Oxford squad this year. But Ben, I suppose for Cambridge on the flip side, you know, they've got 3 returners, they've got a mix of homegrown talent in there, but it's a system that is just churning out result after result, and that you get so much belief from a system like that, don't you?
Absolutely, that's very true. I think we've got a good mix in the Cambridge crew here of past experience, especially in the stern pair with Maddie Jackson, Arden Berlinger. In fact, Arden's had a stroke last year, so I think they've got a really, really strong stern pair there. But you know, there's some members of the crew in the middle of the boat who learnt to row at colleges, and they've then come through into the Cambridge system and really progressed. And I think there is really some special magic going on at Cambridge at the moment.
Yeah, certainly. Well, some of those, Freya Clarkson, she learned to row at Emmanuel College as a fresher, sat behind her at 5. Gigi Pezier as well, started sculling at Guildford Rowing Club, but actually learned to sweep at Queen's College. And Jessica van der Rinstoop, just behind her again, learned to row St Catherine's only 2 years ago at the start of her PhD, a previous gymnast. So quite an inexperienced engine room in the middle of that Cambridge boat, but the coaches, they're able to turn them into boat race winners and people who are in contention this year to win a boat race. And as you know, we're moving down, we're past Chiswick Pier, we're moving towards the bandstand, and in the next couple of minutes we'll be getting towards Barnes Bridge. There is the bandstand. So a few hundred metres to go until they get to Barnes Bridge, and Cambridge at the moment are just looking so strong, aren't they, Ben?
Absolutely. I think conditions here are lovely as well. So both crews are looking fantastic, but Cambridge really are pushing on here, just staying in their rhythm, staying really internal here. You know, you can't start to take things for granted at this stage in the race. Anything can happen, as we say. But you know, the statistics are proven here as we come into Barnes Bridge that the leading crew here is looking likely to go on to win. But you know, we really have to see what happens. But Oxford really do have to dig in and keep pressing on here as well.
You can see there that Cox stroke pairing. Sarah Sharp, as we've mentioned, you know, she's doing her PhD in environmental education at Jesus. Their president, Maddie Jackson, sat just in front of her, and they are now approaching Barnes Bridge. We're into the final 1,500, 1,600 metres of the race. It'll be a few minutes until we get to the finish line, and Cambridge University, as they have done year after year after year in this lightweight women's boat race, are looking incredibly strong. They're in prime position to step up and win this race. And as tradition dictates, as the rules say, both of these crews must pass through the middle of Barnes Bridge. And Cambridge will be the first of those to do it. Cambridge passing under, it's the light blues in front as we come into the final stages of this, the 41st lightweight women's boat race between Oxford and Cambridge University. We can look back on that Oxford crew. As you said, their captain Olivia Ramsey in the stroke seat, backed up by Amelia Monaghan. She, of course, learned to row as a J15 at St Paul's Girls' School. She's used to this stretch of water. She's raced and trained on it for so many years as a junior, and she'll be able to bring that experience to the crew. But they are sat in position 2. They're in a losing position at the moment. as Cambridge University just striding out. But I think India at this point for Oxford, you know, it's been a strong crew they've been able to build together, a mixture of talent they've brought in, homegrown talent as well. And I think there's a lot of belief in the Oxford camp at the moment that a win is coming in the next few years.
Definitely. Even last year, we got told this is the year we're going to do it, so it makes it even more heartbreaking when it doesn't. But those girls who were in the race last year would have been using that defeat to spur their training this year. There's 4 returners, which is like a big advantage for them to have, and they've got to then use the newbies and kind of motivate them to train for this big race and use all the resources they have. And right now Cambridge have a huge mental advantage of being able to see Oxford, and the returners there would be thinking that the end is in sight and that they can win this, which is a huge mental push, so they'll be able to spur them on even more.
Certainly. Well, there we see back with Cambridge University. They're not winding down, they're certainly not slowing down at this stages of the race, they're not letting up. Cambridge University continuing to stride out ahead of Oxford in this lightweight women's boat race. They've got a few hundred metres to go at this point. Victory is all but guaranteed. We can see the flotilla of boats following this race in the background, and it'll be packed full of Cambridge fans and spectators who will be delighted with the performance they are seeing from their girls in light blue. There we see though Olivia Ramsey, Amelia Monaghan behind her, Agnes Prager, Erica Dutton, the second of 4 returners, Hazel Bott behind her, the third of 4 returners. She of course learned to row on Barn Elms, on the tideway, on this stretch of river. And Indigo Butler in the bow seat for Oxford, their 4th returner, also from the 2023 race as well. But into the final stages now of this, the 41st edition of the lightweight women's boat race between Oxford University and Cambridge University. And for the 6th consecutive time in a row, it will be the light blues, it will be Cambridge University out in front and victorious. The overall record stands at 24 wins for Cambridge, 17s for Oxford, and very soon, in a couple of seconds' time, it will be 25 wins for Cambridge University. They've got 3 returners who tasted victory last year. They've got 9 on board this year who will taste victory. And what a day for the Cambridge lightweight women. They previously won the women's spare race earlier on in the week. They've done it in the men's spare race as well. But here in the lightweight boat race, it will be the Cambridge women, it will be the light blues who are victorious. They've beaten Oxford for the 6th consecutive time in a row. And what a day to be light blue as Oxford University, the dark blues, come across the finish line. It's 2nd place for Oxford yet again. And there we see the hands up, the cheers are coming from this Cambridge lightweight crew. 6 consecutive wins in the lightweight women's boat race for Cambridge. Talk about dynasties. And this is very much one that is underway at the moment.
Thank you.
But at this point, the flag hasn't been raised. The hand is up from the cox of the Oxford lightweight boat. That is from Verity Black, and she will be having a conversation with Kath Finnecane. And India at this point, you know, there was some aggressive steering earlier on in the race, but ultimately the crews didn't clash, did they?
No, so there wasn't any contact, so I would assume that this appeal wouldn't go through. However, it's up to Verity to argue her case here about how much they impacted the Oxford rhythm. So we'll see what the umpire has to say.
So we'll see if we can listen in. I don't think we're quite able to pick up the conversation. But Ben, as India said, you know, there was some aggressive steering that came for Cambridge, but ultimately the crews didn't clash. So from your perspective, it's another reason as to why the coxes are so important in this race.
Absolutely, the coxes are really, really important, and I think that risk of the aggressive steering earlier in the race from Cox, Sarah Sharp for Cambridge really has paid off here. As long as the umpire